On a single afternoon in Dubai, the air felt like 62 degrees Celsius, 143 degrees Fahrenheit. Not a record air temperature. Something else. The standard heat index chart used by meteorologists simply stops at 58 Celsius. The reading on July 17th, 2024, broke the scale. For a city built on defying the limits of engineering, this was a limit of biology. Because at that temperature, human sweat stops evaporating. The body's primary cooling system fails completely. A healthy adult, resting in the shade, will die of hyperthermia within hours. And the most alarming part of this story is not that a city reached an unlivable temperature for a few hours. It is that the process is accelerating. The city is now engineered into a feedback loop that makes the outside air deadlier every year. To understand what is happening in Dubai, you have to look at the calendar. Today is July 3rd, 2026. This date marks the beginning of a traditional 40-day meteorological phase known as Jamrat al-Kaith. The Embers of Summer. Ibrahim al-Jarwan, the chairman of the Emirates Astronomy Society, tracks this period not just as a cultural artifact, but as a scientific reality. It is the annual window when the Arabian Peninsula's climate reaches its most violent peak. Temperatures inland, in towns like Swayhan, are now expected to pass 50 degrees Celsius. Hot, dry Samum winds sweep off the desert. The locals call it the poison wind. But in the coastal metropolis of Dubai, that dry heat collides with something else. It hits a wall of humidity rolling off the hypersaline waters of the Persian Gulf. This is what creates the lethal variable. It's called wet bulb temperature. The air temperature we see on a weather report measures sensible heat. A wet bulb thermometer measures the lowest temperature that can be reached through the evaporation of water. It is a direct proxy for how effectively a human body can cool itself by sweating. At a wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees Celsius or 95 Fahrenheit, it does not matter if the air is 40 degrees or 50 degrees. Sweat no longer evaporates. No amount of water you drink can save you. The atmosphere itself prevents your body from shedding heat. And the city of Dubai is pushing itself, minute by minute, closer to that absolute threshold. This is the part the skyline photographs do not show you. The city itself has become a heat battery. The endless towers of glass, steel, and concrete absorb solar radiation all day. The vast networks of asphalt roads and parking lots act like black plates on a stove. At night, when the surrounding desert begins to cool, Dubai does not. The urban core radiates all that stored energy back into the atmosphere, creating what is known as the urban heat island effect. This can keep the city between 3 and 7 degrees Celsius warmer than the desert that surrounds it. Look at the temperature logs for a typical August night. It is not uncommon for the temperature at 3 in the morning to be 37 degrees Celsius. That is body temperature. The human body gets no chance to recover from the stress of the day. The nights offer no relief. They only prolong the exposure. Zoom out, and you see the true scale of the machine Dubai has built. To make this city of glass livable in a desert, it requires an astonishing amount of energy. Up to 70% of all electricity consumed in the United Arab Emirates during the summer is used for one single purpose: air conditioning. Bassam Ahmad, an energy efficiency expert at Danfoss, has studied this system for years. The vast district cooling plants, the individual units in every single apartment and office, they are all drawing enormous power from a grid that is still heavily dependent on fossil fuels. So the city burns fossil fuels to pump heat out of its buildings. That pumps carbon dioxide into the global atmosphere, which warms the planet. But there is a second, more immediate feedback loop happening right at the city's edge. A local one. Here is the detail that reveals the core of the paradox. Dubai is a city in a desert with almost no fresh water. The water for its taps, its fountains, and its massive cooling infrastructure comes from the sea. The city operates some of the largest desalination plants on Earth. These facilities work by boiling seawater, or pushing it through membranes at extreme pressure, to separate the salt. The process is incredibly energy intensive. It also produces a toxic byproduct, a hot, super concentrated brine, and that hot brine is pumped directly back into the Persian Gulf. The Gulf is already one of the warmest seas in the world. It is shallow. It has a slow circulation. The constant injection of hot brine from desalination plants across the region raises its baseline temperature. A warmer sea evaporates faster. That faster evaporation pumps more moisture into the air over the coast. That added moisture is what turns a dangerously hot day into a lethally humid one. It is what raises the wet bulb temperature. Dubai is boiling the ocean to run its air conditioners, and in doing so, it is making the air outside its cooled buildings more and more unlivable. This is not a theoretical model. The data shows it happening in real time. For years, the UAE's highest recorded temperatures hovered just over 52 degrees Celsius, a record set back in July of 2002, and again in 2010 on Al Yasat Island. These were seen as extreme generational outliers. Then, on May 24, 2025, the inland town of Sweihan, a known heat sink about 97 kilometers from the coast, recorded 51.6 degrees Celsius. It was the highest May temperature ever documented in the country's history. The very next day, the record was broken again. The acceleration is visible not just in the peaks, but in the frequency of the extremes. Look at the government's response. On June 15, 2026, just a few weeks ago, the UAE's mandatory midday break rule went into effect. It legally forbids any outdoor labor in direct sunlight between the hours of 12:30 p.m. and 3 p.m. This is not a suggestion. It is a law enforced to prevent mass casualties among the country's vast population of migrant construction workers. But human rights organizations now warn that this measure is becoming dangerously inadequate. The rule, which runs through September 15th, is designed around the old model of peak solar noon. It does not account for the new reality of the wet bulb threat. Dangerous heat index values are now frequently recorded at 5 p.m., at 7 p.m., even after the sun has set. The trapped heat and suffocating humidity linger into the night. The 2.5-hour break in the afternoon is a bandage on a problem that is now a 24-hour condition for 6 months of the year. The atmosphere over Dubai is now so supercharged with heat and moisture that it has begun to break in other, more paradoxical ways. On April 16, 2024, the city experienced a historic deluge. A storm system stalled over the Emirates and dropped 255 millimeters of rain in less than 24 hours. That is nearly 2 years of average rainfall in a single day. The desert city, engineered exclusively to fight the sun, has no infrastructure to manage that kind of water. The airport, one of the busiest in the world, was flooded. Highways turned into rivers. The city that built the world's tallest building was brought to a standstill by an amount of water its storm drains were never, ever designed to handle. A study by the World Weather Attribution Initiative confirmed the link. The unnatural warmth of the atmosphere allowed it to hold an unnatural amount of moisture, which was then released in a single catastrophic event. The extreme heat created an extreme flood. Now, here is the part nobody is putting in the tourist brochures. The entire economy of Dubai in the summer has become a managed retreat indoors. The city promotes itself as a year-round destination. But summer in Dubai is a campaign that sells access to a network of interconnected, refrigerated ecosystems. Tourists and residents move from air-conditioned apartments through air-conditioned tunnels to air-conditioned cars to the 1.1 million square meter Dubai Mall. They can go skiing on artificial snow at Ski Dubai, while the temperature outside is 45 degrees Celsius. The beaches are empty. The sightseeing tours are suspended. The city's outdoor existence is erased by a climate it helped to create. The very symbol of its global ambition, the glittering skyline, is a monument to an engineering solution that is exacerbating the problem at a terrifying pace. The numbers are stark. That 70% figure for cooling share of electricity consumption is not an academic estimate. It is the operational reality of the system. Imagine a city where, for half the year, 7 out of every 10 lights are on simply to power the machines pushing heat from one place to another. This creates a terrifying vulnerability. Any significant disruption to the power grid during the peak of Jamrat al-Kaith would not just be an inconvenience, it would be a mass casualty event. The city's survival is entirely dependent on an unbroken chain of energy production and distribution. But that chain is forged from the very fossil fuels that are destabilizing the global climate system, making heat waves like this more frequent and more intense everywhere. Dubai has become a microcosm of the planet's central dilemma. Its method of adaptation is a direct driver of the crisis it is adapting to. This isn't just about record Hig H's anymore. The all-time national record of 52.1 degrees Celsius from 2002 remains the ceiling for now. But the floor is rising. The duration of extreme heat is lengthening. The number of days per year that cross critical health thresholds is climbing steadily. The National Center of Meteorology, the UAE's official government authority, now issues near daily warnings about fog formation in the mornings, a direct result of the extreme nighttime humidity, followed by extreme heat warnings in the afternoon. The entire diurnal cycle has been warped. What does it feel like to be on the ground when the heat index passes 60 Celsius? It is an assault on the senses. The air is thick, soupy, and hard to breathe. Metal surfaces like door handles or railings can cause contact burns. The sky is often a hazy, milky white, the sunlight scattered by an atmosphere saturated with both dust and water vapor. Visibility drops. For the millions of workers from South Asia, the Philippines, and Africa who build and maintain the city, there is no escape into a cooled mall. They retreat to cramped labor accommodations, which often have inadequate or unreliable cooling. They are living, day and night, on the front line of a climate threshold being crossed. Their bodies absorb the physiological cost of every degree the wet bulb temperature climbs. The midday break offers a brief, mandated respite from the sun, but not from the heat. The air itself is the danger, and the system continues to feed itself. More towers are built, requiring more cooling. More desalination plants are commissioned to supply the water, pumping more hot brine back into the Gulf. Every new development designed to attract more residents and tourists adds another layer to the heat island, another draw on the power grid, another degree of local warming. It is a spiral, a relentless, self-reinforcing process of thermal escalation. The city's growth model is fundamentally at odds with its long-term habitability. Think about the sheer physics of it. Water has a high specific heat capacity. It takes a huge amount of energy to warm it up. The fact that the Persian Gulf surface temperature is rising is a clear signal of the immense thermal load being pumped into the local environment. This is not just a weather phenomenon. It is a fundamental alteration of the region's marine and atmospheric chemistry. The consequences ripple outward. The warmer water impacts marine life. It alters local wind patterns. It fuels more powerful storms. That single day in April 2024, with 255 millimeters of rain, was not a freak occurrence. It was a symptom of a system pushed far out of its historic balance. It demonstrated that a city entirely optimized for one type of extreme, heat, is catastrophically vulnerable to the other extremes that the first one inevitably creates. The story of Dubai's heat is no longer just about the summer. It's about the erosion of the shoulder seasons. Spring and autumn are becoming shorter, hotter, and more humid. The period of genuinely pleasant weather is shrinking, compressed into a few weeks in January and February. The baseline is shifting. The record-breaking day in May of 2025, hitting 51. 6 degrees in Swaihan was a profound warning. May is supposed to be a transitional month, not the peak of summer. When records fall not by fractions of a degree, but by whole degrees, and when they fall outside of the expected seasonal peak, it is a sign that the underlying climate engine is running hotter and faster than ever before. It is a silent crisis, unfolding behind the glass of cooled interiors. For the visitor, it is an inconvenience, a reason to stay by the hotel pool. For the resident, it is a line item on an electricity bill and a reason to plan your life around underground parking. But for the city as a system, and for the people who must exist outside, it is an existential threat that is no longer on the horizon. It has arrived. The reading of 62 degrees Celsius on July 17, 2024, was not just a number. It was a message, a signal that the buffer between Dubai's engineered reality and the planet's physical limits has worn away. So, 3 questions now hang over the glittering towers of the city. How much hotter can the feedback loop get before the energy grid can no longer keep up? With the very method of survival making the problem worse, what does an actual solution even look like? And what happens to a city of 3 million people when the air outside is no longer survivable for human beings? The heat from Dubai's air conditioners is right now rising into the night sky. Down at the coast, the outfall pipes of the desalination plants are discharging millions of gallons of hot brine into the Gulf, and the water molecules evaporating from that unnaturally warm sea are at this moment lifting into the air, adding their weight to the humid blanket that will greet the city tomorrow morning, ready to be cooked by another day of the embers of summer. The wet bulb is still rising, the poison wind is still blowing, and somewhere in the baked concrete and asphalt of the city, the heat of yesterday is still bleeding out into the dark, waiting for the sun